This is Nadine Awad, a 16-year-old girl, an Arab citizen of Israel. She was studying biology and chemistry, and she dreamed of changing the world. She was murdered last Wednesday by the radical jihadi terrorist group HAmas. A Hamas rocket slammed into her home in central Israel, killing her and her father. Over the last week, millions of Israeli children, women, and men have been huddling in bomb shelters, while thousands of Hamas rockets landed all around them. Hamas has murdered 10 people in Israel, Jews and Arabs, and hundreds of its rockets have fallen short upon the people of Gaza itself, killing Palestinian children and destroying Palestinian homes. Hamas is carrying out its terror attacks while hiding behind Palestinian houses, schools, and hospitals, deliberately using civilians as human shields. Just before I arrived here today, I called my elderly parents who live in the southern city of Ashkelon and have just 30 seconds to reach a bomb shelter each time Hamas attacks. Member of the Security Council, let me ask you, what would you do if thousands of terrorist rockets were being fired at your country, at your people, at your parents or children? How would you respond if an organization with a similar fanatic jihadist ideology as ISIS was bombing Beijing or Moscow or Dublin and shutting down the airports of Paris or Oslo or London? What would you expect the Security Council to do? Mr. President, this is not the first time that Hamas has indiscriminately fired deadly missiles at Israeli civilians while hiding behind Palestinian civilians. But this time, it's different. It was completely premeditated by Hamas in order to gain political power. It was all a part of their vicious plan. While Hamas seeks the destruction of the state of Israel, it's also vying to take power in the West Bank and to replace the Palestinian Authority. Hamas was frustrated last month when President Abbas postponed Palestinian elections after not holding them for 15 years. It looked for another way to seize power. So, unfortunately, it chose to escalate tensions in Jerusalem as a pretext to start this war. Suddenly, Hamas leader Mohammed Deif, who has been silent for years, was threatening Israel would pay a heavy price if an Israeli court went ahead and ruled on a property dispute in Jerusalem. Now let me be clear. Israel is a country of law with a robust and independent judiciary. As in any democracy, the Israeli government does not interfere with court proceedings. Everyone knows that. Buying into Hamas's political propaganda ploy to portray the massive, unprovoked rocket attacks as a result of the dispute in Sheikh Jarrah is not only wrong, it is dangerous. It sends a disturbing message. There is never an excuse to indiscriminately fire rockets at civilians. There is never a justification for terror. Do you really believe that this property dispute is what caused Hamas to launch these large-scale attacks on the people of Israel? So after threatening Israel over Sheikh Jarrah, Hamas's next move was to incite violence on the Temple Mount, the holiest site in the world for Jews and one of the holiest for Muslims. Palestinian extremists turned the Al-Aqsa Mosque into a site for stockpiling weapons and launched violent attacks with firebombs and rocks against Jewish worshippers and against the Israeli police.